Welcome to Tales of a Wanderer, where stories of darkness, courage, and the human spirit are told in whispers by the fire. Tonight, we travel to the silent canyons of Utah, where one man faced the impossible and learned what freedom truly means. This is the story of Aron Ralston and the 127 hours that changed his life forever. Step into the silence and listen.
April 26th, 2003. The Utah desert stretched endlessly under a pale blue sky. Sandstone cliffs glowed like embers in the sun, their edges carved sharp by 1,000 years of wind. Aron Ralston, 27 years old, drove his old blue pickup down a dirt road toward the Maze District, a remote labyrinth of canyons few people ever see. He wasn't reckless. He was confident. A mechanical engineer by training, a mountaineer by heart. He carried ropes, gear, a headlamp, a small camera, and a cheap multi-tool, enough for a day's adventure. He left no note, no call to a friend. He simply smiled at the horizon and said to himself, "This is where I belong." By afternoon, he reached the narrow slot of Blue John Canyon. Walls rose 40 feet high, sandstone twisting like a frozen river. The air was cool inside, silent except for the drip of ancient water echoing through stone. He recorded himself on his handheld camera, cheerful, joking, narrating the climb like a travel show. There was laughter in his voice, the kind of joy that only comes from solitude. Then, the sound, a sharp crack, a slide of gravel, a shadow overhead, a boulder dislodged from the canyon wall began to fall. Instinct made him raise his arms, but the rock hit, rolling, crushing, pinning his right arm against the canyon wall. The world went still. Dust hung in the air like smoke. The only sound was his breathing, short, ragged. He pushed, he pulled, he shouted. But the rock did not move. It weighed nearly 800 pounds, a monument of nature that had waited centuries for this moment. He tried to chip away at it with his knife, sparks of metal against stone. He tied ropes around it, rigging pulleys, using every bit of engineering he knew. Nothing worked. The light began to fade. The desert night grew cold. He looked up at the strip of blue sky above him, shrinking into darkness, and whispered, "Well, Aron, looks like it's just you and me." He was trapped, 40 feet below the surface, 1 liter of water, 2 burritos, and no one knew he was there. The first night was not panic. It was belief. He told himself he'd be found. He rationed his food, took sips of water, shouted for help until his voice cracked. He imagined the search teams, helicopters, news alerts. But the desert was silent. By the morning of day 2, he began conserving energy. He carved his name into the sandstone wall beside him. Aron Ralston, April 26, 2003. And beneath it, the letters R.I.P. He smiled at the irony. He started recording messages on his camera, small clips addressed to his family. Apologies, gratitude. He laughed sometimes, half delirious, half brave, as if refusing to let fear win. The canyon changed with time. When sunlight passed over the narrow slit above, the walls glowed gold, then crimson, then black. Each color marked another hour lost. By day 3, thirst became agony. He drank his urine, slow, controlled, mechanical, because he knew it might keep him alive another day. He began hallucinating, faces of friends, a woman in blue, smiling, the sound of music that wasn't there. He spoke to the rock as if it could hear him. "You win, for now." By day 4, exhaustion became peace. He accepted the idea of dying there. He made a will in his mind, giving away his car, his gear, his memories. He said goodbye to the world with the calmness of a man on a quiet evening. Then, sometime late that night, something changed. He looked at the rock, not as his killer, but as a teacher. He realized it wasn't against him. It was simply there. And if he wanted to live, he had to do the unthinkable. He tested the knife again. Dull, cheap, blunt. It couldn't even pierce his skin. But the idea came slowly, horrifyingly. He could break the bones first. He tried twisting his arm, heard the faintest crack. He knew it could work. He recorded one last message for his parents. Calm, loving, final. Then whispered, "This rock has been waiting for me my entire life." He slept one last time beneath the stars he couldn't see. Morning. Day 6. A pale light slid down the canyon walls like water. He felt calm, resolved. There was no other path. He wedged his body just right, using the rock itself as leverage. A sharp twist, and the bones snapped. He did not scream. He simply breathed, focused, mechanical. Then came the cutting. Tendons, flesh. The knife, dull and slow. Friction instead of slicing. He worked through it, steady, counting each motion in silence. He said later, "I wasn't cutting off my arm. I was cutting away everything that was keeping me from life." When it was over, he stared at the boulder, a monument to his rebirth. He tied a tourniquet with rope and rappelled down the sheer face of the canyon, one-handed, bleeding, but alive. He hiked for miles under the desert sun, leaving a trail of blood and dust behind him. At last, he saw shapes, people, a family hiking near the trailhead. He waved weakly. They ran to him, shouting for help, giving water, holding him upright. Minutes later, a helicopter appeared above the canyon. The blades thundered through the silence that had held him prisoner. Aron Ralston had survived 127 hours, 5 days and 7 nights, alone with a rock and his will to live. Months later, when asked what he felt in that moment, he said, "I didn't lose my arm in that canyon. I gained my freedom there." He returned to climbing, to mountains, to life. He became a symbol of endurance, proof that strength isn't loud and heroism doesn't always look like victory. The canyon remains silent now. Visitors walk past, never knowing the exact spot where one man bargained with death and won, because survival is not escaping death. It's choosing life again and again, even when it hurts. And somewhere deep in the Utah desert, Aron Ralston's echo still whispers, "Keep moving."
And so, the canyon fell quiet once more. The sun rose over the desert, as it always had. But for one man, the world would never look the same. Aron Ralston walked away from Blue John Canyon, scarred, changed, alive. He left behind his arm and found his purpose. Perhaps that's what survival truly is, not escaping death, but learning how to live again. Thank you for joining me on this journey through time, silence, and survival. You've been listening to Tales of a Wanderer. Until the next story, keep wandering.